All right, let's talk about Shoplifters. Shoplifters is a Japanese film. It is a story about a family. I don't want to quite call them grifters. One is a stripper. One is an elderly woman who is, I guess, committing like a form of pension fraud. And then you've got a father and son who shoplift. Pretty early on in the film, the father and son come upon a young girl. It becomes clear the daughter is a victim of abuse in an uncaring, unloving household. And so the father and the son, and the rest of the family, really, take in the young girl. And what I really want to talk to you guys about is the nature of perspective and context when evaluating whether a character is good or evil.
I don't know what to say.
It's a very famous saying that every villain is the hero of their own story. And if you're my age, one of the first things you probably learned in film is that it's sometimes okay to steal a loaf of bread if you're an aspiring Arabian knight and your pet monkey is hungry, which is also why Aladdin was recently rated the American Baker Union's least favorite film of the 1990s. Shoplifters is very much a film about perspective. You almost exclusively deal with this series of, I want to say unsavory, it's the word that comes to my mind, like, you know, the unsavory characters who do these bad things. But while the behaviors are technically bad, the characters themselves have such a consistent sweet side to them. Their interactions always feel so genuine. The family at home is just so kind of interesting and fun to be around, and all of the characters, despite their moral shortcomings, just seem like in some ways they really do aspire to be good people, or at least they view goodness as how they treat each other. And that's what you can really get behind. And when those are the only characters you're really exposed to, it almost gives this film an ironically optimistic and idealistic view of what it is to be a good character. And there definitely are some pretty big bombshells that come in throughout the film, but what it really shows is just that if characters are sweet and interesting enough, if characters are well developed enough, we'll overlook and put up with a lot of shit as the audience. We're genuinely a pretty empathetic group of people. And what is particularly interesting is that even when these bombshell kind of revelations occur, the characters in every aspect of their lives spend the entire movie kind of like justifying their actions. The one example, since you know there's shoplifting involved because it's in the title, is, you know, as long as the store's not going out of business, I mean, they're not really being hurt. You know, you're just taking what you need to survive, and that's okay. And in many ways, that is a very similar justification to a lot of other behaviors. As long as there's not some ultimately horrible outcome, then some minor encroachment on somebody's positive or negative liberties is allowable. The ends sort of justify the means. And so you as the audience are also kind of forced to rationalize with them and ask the question of, are they right, are they wrong? At what point do you draw that line? At what point are these people bad people? But all in all, you know, even by the end of it, I was still really rooting for these characters to have some sort of a happy ending. And the film leaves you with what in retrospect seems a bit obvious, but it's obvious because given the setup, it's the best possible ending. It's the question it should really be asking, and that's, if you can spend an hour and a half empathizing with these characters who do bad things but are good people, if you can accept that their actions are bad, therefore you have to accept that some actions are good. In other words, yeah, if you steal a loaf of bread so that you won't starve to death, we can agree in some utilitarian sense that it's probably better that you do that, even though we'd like to discourage it in society. But we feel bad for the baker. And because we realize that the action is technically bad, although we can justify it, the baker is entitled to some sort of justice for his bread being stolen. At the end of this, the metaphysical baker gets justice for the stolen metaphysical loaf. And it really forces you to sit back and simultaneously weigh two thoughts. One, this is justice, and we can't live in a vigilante system, and we can't live in chaos, and we need to have law and order. And two, it really fucking sucks that this is what I think should have happened, and not what I think ought to have happened. And so it does leave you with some interesting moral questions. I know that some of that seems really kind of bizarrely meta-ethical, But it makes sense, trust me. Who should see this film? If you like really good character studies, if you like morally ambiguous characters in idyllic environments. I know I'm starting to sound like one of those really strange like Netflix categories. Like, if you like zebras that can also speak ancient French Canadian. It isn't even that ancient. That would be a really shitty Netflix genre. I'm gonna cut that. I'm gonna cut this part too. If you are interested in something that really is at times heartwarming and at times very challenging, despite the premise, it's probably one of the most optimistic and warm films of the film festival. And especially seeing it right after Roma, it was a really interesting sort of slice of life juxtaposed to what you saw in Roma. It really asks you to live with this family and evaluate them based on how they treat the rest of their family. I would totally watch it again. I thought it was probably the highlight of the film festival for me. And I think a lot of the people that I talked to felt the same way. So Shoplifters, check it out. I need to work on my Netflix genre game.